Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. And today is a special edition because it is a Monday. We don't usually do programming on Monday, but today is Shark and Ray Awareness Day, which is a really special day around the world where we get to celebrate sharks and rays. We should be celebrating them every day, but today specifically, we learn about sharks and rays and why these animals are amazing but also so important to our ocean habitat. So today we're going to explore sharks. Later today, if you want to join us, we're going to do a draw with us. And then after that, we're going to talk all about rays. So today we're going to focus all on sharks and rays. Now in this program, for this half hour, we're going to focus on sharks and conservation. So the ways that the Aquarium of the Pacific here in Long Beach, California, the ways we are working to protect sharks and ray species. Now, if you'd like to join us today, meaning if you have any questions, if you want to share your observations, if you just want to say hi, we have a way for you to reach out to us. So I've got my friend Lynette controlling everything you see behind me, and she just put up our text line. So if you want to send us any of those questions, observations, like anything, you want to wait any way to communicate with us, you can go ahead and text us at 562-286-1838. You can also email us at live@lbaop.org. So those are two ways for you to reach out to us. Lynette will keep an eye on those text line and email, and she'll pass your messages on to me. All right, let's get started. So I'm actually going to step off the screen for a moment, and this way we can take a look at Shark Lagoon. So this is an exhibit here at the aquarium, and we are looking at it live. So if I walked outside to our Shark Lagoon, I'd be looking at the same thing that we are looking at. Now, the morning is a great time to check in on our sharks because they're pretty active, especially right before they get fed. Now, to start off, I just want to get our scientist brains working. That's right, you're a scientist today. When you tune in with us and watch any of our programs, you are a scientist. So I like to get our scientist brains working by making some observations. Now, if you've joined us for any other program, you have heard us talk about observations, this tool that scientists use. But if this is your first time joining us, welcome. And we like to flex our brain by making observations and just describing what we see. Observations are a great tool that scientists use, and it's great because anyone can make an observation because you're just going to describe what it is that we're watching. So, what do you notice? Are there any shapes or colors that you recognize? What about any things in this image or in this habitat? It could be living things or non living. What about the animals? Do you recognize the kind of animals we're seeing? Observations can even be the behaviors, what they're doing, what is happening. So go ahead, take a moment. If you're watching in a group, you can share with the people around you. If you're watching at home, you can share with an adult or with a pet or just think it in your brain. Or you can text us. We'll put that number back up. You can text us or email us your observation. Now, while you're getting your observations all together, I'll share some of the things that I noticed. So I noticed that there's some sand down here, and then there's some rocks. I noticed this kind of rock cave over here. And then over here, there's some more rocks and there's some coral. So this is a coral reef habitat. Now I also noticed there are some sharks in here. Did you notice that as well? Excellent. So I noticed the sharks are kind of swimming around, and I noticed there's a couple different types of sharks. And I can tell because their body shape is different and the colors on their body are different. They're also different sizes. Look, there's a shark. And that one seems to have spots on its body and a really long tail. I also noticed there's some fish in here. Did you notice the fish? And then I noticed something here in the back. It almost looks like a long stick, but it's got a body attached to it. I noticed there's some stingrays in here. Excellent. Did you make any other observations? I bet you have lots of things that you've noticed here in Shark Lagoon. Well, excellent. So we do have sharks in here. Obviously, we call it Shark Lagoon for a reason. And there are a couple different types of sharks. Now, those ones with the polka dots that we can see, there's one swimming around right here. Right here. This is our zebra shark. So we've got two zebra sharks we can see right now. Oh, look, there's one of the stingrays. So we've got our zebra shark swimming around. We also have some black tip reef sharks. Now we can tell the black tip reef sharks because they've got black at the tip of their fins. And we like to make sure that we know the black tip reef shark because we also have a gray reef shark. And the gray reef shark is different. It doesn't have the black on its fins, but it has dark gray on its tail fin. There's one of our black tip reef sharks. And then the other kind of shark we have in here is called a sandbar shark, which I think is a really cool one. It's got a really strong or prominent dorsal fin. That's the fin on their back. Now let's take a closer look at a shark, and we can identify the things that make a shark a shark. Excellent. I think this is like a glamour shot of this gray reef shark, but it's a perfect capture of its whole body, so we can take a look closer at really what makes a shark a shark. Now, if I showed you this picture, I bet for at least most of you, you would say immediately, that's a shark, because our brain sees it and we just recognize it as a shark. But what I want to take a moment to break down is, how do we know that that is a shark? There's a couple things on its body, or its body itself, that are clues that tell our brain that this is a shark. So, what do you notice about this animal? Now, the thing that stands out to me, and maybe it's the same for you, are the fins. Is that what you were going to say? Excellent. So, sharks have really prominent fins, and those fins are really important for helping the shark to move. So, we've got our dorsal fin, that's the fin at the top. You can go ahead and make your own dorsal fin. That fin is used for balance. So when we see a shark swim, we'll go back to Shark Lagoon in just a moment. We're not going to go just yet. But when we watch our sharks again, we'll notice that that fin doesn't really move. It's pretty stable on the top of the shark's body. Then they've got these ones on the side, kind of like airplane wings. You can hold your arms out to the side like these shark fins. These are the pectoral or the side fins. And these ones also, they don't move too much, but they're used for steering. So when the shark wants to change direction, they sort of lean one way or the other and use those side fins to help them steer. Then they've got some of these smaller little back fins here. We've got anal fins. We've got another sort of farther back dorsal fin. But then this one here, this big fin here is called the caudal fin or the tail fin. And that's the one that's going to help the shark move forward. So if you clap your hands together and you move your hands side to side, that is going to be your shark tail, your shark fin. So sharks, they move their tails side to side. So now let's take a look back at Shark Lagoon and watch our sharks swimming for a moment. And we can really see all these fins. Now that we've talked about them, we can look closer at them and notice their top fin and their side fins don't move too much, although they are important and they need those fins to help them swim. But it's their tail fin that's going to go back and forth or side to side that really helps push them forward. We can see it. Oh, it just went off the screen. It's going to come around, hopefully, and we'll see it closer. Of course, now that I talk about them swimming, they all disappear. Here we go. So here's our sandbar shark, and watch it move. Its top fin doesn't really move. The side fins don't move very much. It's the tail fin swishing side to side that pushes it forward. And same with our zebra shark. So they do need all those fins to swim, but it's really their tail fin that's going to have the most movement pushing that shark forward. All right, let's go back to that glamour shot. Excellent. So fins are one of the things that make a shark a shark. What else do you notice? Excellent. So what about these lines right here? Did you notice those? Those are the shark's gills. Now, what do you think the gills are used for? Because they are an important part that show us that this animal is a shark. What are they used for? That's right, they're used for breathing. Now, it's not the same way that our nose works because our nose is connected to our lungs. So we're breathing the air. But sharks, they're going to use their gills to breathe, but they're breathing tiny little bubbles of oxygen that's in the water, something called dissolved oxygen. We can't see it by just looking at the water, but there is oxygen in the ocean. And sharks are going to open their mouth. They're going to pull water in through their mouth. It's going to run over their gills. The water is going to release, but they have these tiny little hairs in their gills that are going to catch all those bubbles of oxygen, allowing them to breathe. Now, these gills, they are a sign that it is a shark because another animal that lives in the water, that is a relative of our shark, are other fish, like bony fish, like those ones we saw in Shark Lagoon. And they are going to use gills to breathe as well, but their gills are going to look different. So these lines, kind of like hash marks, that's something we see on sharks. Excellent. So our shark has fins. It has gills. What else do you notice? It's got a mouth. Absolutely. It's got a mouth. And that mouth is really important because that is how they're going to eat. And all animals need to eat to survive. Now, sharks' mouths vary or they differ depending on the type of shark based on what they're eating, where they're going to find their food. Sometimes their mouth is in front of their body, like this one. Sometimes their mouth is underneath, so on the bottom. And that means they're going to find food below them. Like our zebra shark's mouth is below. Maybe we can take a look at a zebra shark and see how different the different angle its mouth is. So our gray reef shark, they are looking for food in front of them. They're going to be feeding on things like fish that are going to be able they're going to be able to catch by swimming forward and grabbing the food in front of them. Our zebra shark, however, their mouth, you can't really see it. It's not in front like it was for the gray reef shark. It's actually on the bottom. And if you can see here, the shark is hanging out near the bottom of the ocean, and that's because their food is going to be hiding in the sand. Things like shrimp or crustaceans, other crabs and things. Oh, here we go. There's its mouth. So it's pointed downward because they're finding their food below them. And if their mouth was facing forward and they had to find their food below, they'd have to turn their body in a weird angle. And so it just is easier for them if their mouth is below them to find food below, their mouth is in front to find food in front of them. Excellent. All right, let's go back to Shark Lagoon for a moment. Wonderful. Now that we know, we made some observations, we know what makes a shark, let's talk a little bit about why sharks are important. Now, sharks, they play a really important role in our ocean habitats. They help keep everything in balance. So sharks, they are what we call an indicator species. And when that means it indicates or it tells us something about the ocean. It tells us about the health of the ocean. Many sharks are at the top of the food chain. They're the apex predator, they're one of the top predators. And so if there's enough food to feed all the levels of that food chain all the way up to sharks, that tells us the ocean is healthy. Because there's enough food to feed the bottom level and then the level above them and above and so forth and so on. And so knowing there's a healthy population of sharks tells us the ocean is healthy. So it tells us something about the ocean. Now, in some areas where there are coral reefs, oh, we like to break, say hi to our turtle, but we're going to focus on sharks today. In some areas, there aren't healthy populations of sharks. And we can really tell the difference of those habitats without sharks. And so these animals are really important for us to protect because they keep our oceans healthy. Now, sharks, they do eat a lot. And one of the things they eat, fish, but oftentimes they'll go after the fish that are maybe older or aren't as healthy as other fish. And that actually helps clean up the ocean. So not only do they tell us something about the ocean, they indicate, but they also clean up ocean spaces, allowing more room for healthier animals to thrive. So sharks are a really essential, important part of our ocean habitat. Now, I said we're going to talk about some of the conservation efforts that the Aquarium of the Pacific is a part of. And one of those conservation efforts is a project called Global Finprint. Now, that's a separate organization that we partner with. But what Global Finprint was doing is they were studying coral reefs, just like our habitat is an example of. So they were studying coral reefs around the world to see what a healthy reef with a healthy population of sharks looks like. They're also looking at what a reef that doesn't have a lot of sharks, what that reef looks like, whether that looks healthy or not. And that way, kind of mapping out these shark populations, these healthy coral reefs, these healthy shark populations, the ones that don't look as good, by having a whole database of that information that can help us target our conservation efforts. So we know really what areas need more help. Now, the way that they did this study is they used something called a BRUV. A BRUV is a baited remote underwater video. Now, we have a model of what the BRUV looked like. Oh, it sounds like a really fancy piece of equipment, and it kind of was because it's going in the ocean. But basically, what the BRUV was is this housing here. It had a GoPro camera, so not a fancy camera, just a GoPro attached in front. It had this arm coming out right here. And at the end, we've got little pom poms here, but at the end, it had food in it. That's where the baited part comes from. So it had pieces of fish, squid, other things that would attract animals to it. And they would drop the BRUV into a coral reef and they would let it sit there for a couple hours, attracting all the animals that might live in this habitat. We can see animals like this. And then they would pull the BRUV back onto a boat. They would take the camera and then they would send those videos to partner organizations such as the Aquarium of the Pacific. And what we would do is we would employ the help of our volunteers, and our team of volunteers and staff would watch these videos and they would count. Now you might be wondering, what are they counting? They are counting the number of sharks they would see. They are counting the different species. So have to pay really close attention to differentiate the different types of sharks we're seeing. So number of sharks, the species, also what other animals we're seeing. And we helped build this whole database of all these coral reefs around the world, and reefs that looked healthy and their healthy shark populations, and reefs that maybe didn't look as well, and that would help this organization target their conservation efforts. So we've got some footage from some of those BRUV sort of adventures. So let's take a look at what that footage looked like. So you can actually play along, join in, and if you want, you can kind of keep track of what are you noticing. How many sharks? Look, there's a shark. Now that I can tell you is a gray reef shark. Now the challenge here is knowing the animals, right? Now I know that's a gray reef shark because we have them here at the aquarium and I recognize that tail. At the end of the tail, you can tell it's kind of lined in like a darker gray. But I only know so many shark species, and that's the same with our team. And so part of it is just recognizing a different species, maybe taking some details, right? Making some observations. And then we can look up later what kind of shark that was. So we would watch hours and hours and hours of this footage, learning what these coral reefs look like and what they might need if they don't have healthy shark populations. What might that coral reef need? What is it missing? Is it missing other animals? Is it missing certain types of corals? Are there things that we can do to protect those areas? So this is kind of an interesting conservation project because a lot of it was just making these observations and gathering this data. Sometimes it feels like conservation efforts should be taking action and making changes and putting things back into the ocean or building things, but sometimes it's just about gathering information. Sometimes we need to know what the problem is, what is missing, what is available to us, and kind of build this database or this map before we can actually take action. Ooh, look, this shark kind of looks, oh, it looks maybe like a young one. I thought it looked different because its body was a little different, but I think it's still a gray reef shark. Oh, hello, fish. So watching this footage is really fun. You can actually go to Global Finprint's website, and they have highlights from a lot of their sort of deployments of the BRUV, and you can see all the different animals that they saw. And right here, you can see this is the BRUV. This is the end of the camera, that sort of pull with the food. So this is what's attracting the animals. Now, we weren't feeding the animals outright. A lot of times you hear like, why can't we just feed these animals to attract them to see them? We don't want to feed them, but just providing a little bit of this bait helps bring these animals towards us so we can really see who is in this area. Excellent. All right, let's take a look. I think we've got some other BRUV footage. We can take a look at a different coral reef. So you can even make some observations of, oh, what the background looks like, not just the sharks and the fish itself, but what that coral reef looks like. All right, we're going to take a look at a different set of footage from our BRUV, so from another coral reef, and we can compare and contrast, see how it looks similar and how it looks different. So these are really amazing footage to watch, and it was a really helpful project for our volunteers to help join in this conservation effort with Global Finprint. All right, so this is a really different view. We see a little bit of coral down here. Ooh, but we've got some more open water species here. What do you notice about this video? I'm noticing less fish up close, less of those small fish. And there's some larger sharks. Ooh, there's a shark. Kind of in the distance. Now, this might be harder if you are the one who's watching this video to identify those sharks when they're swimming so far away. But we can look for little clues, like the color pattern on their body. Even the shape of the body is different for each shark, and that can help us identify those sharks. Now we're seeing lots of sharks in here. So that could be an indicator that this is a healthy reef, just like that other one. But there were definitely footage that we captured where there were very few sharks. Doesn't matter how long we had the camera sitting in the water, we didn't see as many sharks. We've got a couple other fish we see swimming around. Excellent. We'll watch for maybe another minute or so. Now, while you're watching, if you have any questions about sharks, about our conservation efforts, feel free to text us at 562-286-1838 or email us at live@lbaop.org. We would love to hear what you want to know about these animals. Look, I think there's some different sharks coming in. There was one down here a second ago that had white on its fins, so that would be a different species. There we go. There's the one that has a little bit of white on its fins. Oop, and here it's coming closer. Excellent. All right. We will pause on this footage. We'll go back into Shark Lagoon in just a moment. But what I want to talk about next is how you can help sharks, right? We talked about one of the efforts the aquarium is a part of here and is part of Global Finprint. We are involved in a couple other conservation efforts with our sharks, including artificial insemination and breeding our sharks to create a population within our aquarium and other aquariums so we aren't pulling from the wild. So we are involved with a lot of projects, but how can you get involved? Well, one of the things is by joining us here live this morning or even coming to the aquarium. Anytime you learn about these animals, that is an act of conservation. That is an effort that you are putting in. You're learning about these animals, you're building connections, and that helps us to understand and spread the word, right? You might be watching this, learn something really cool, go tell someone else, they get interested in sharks, and the more people who are interested in sharks, the more likely we are to have a group effort to save these animals or protect these animals. And we know that conservation efforts only are successful when we're working together as a community. So not just here at the aquarium, not just out there watching, but all of us together. And that's why a lot of our conservation efforts here at the aquarium, whether they are based around sharks or any other animal, we have a group effort. We are working with other institutions as a way to protect these animals because we know we need everyone's brain power to protect these animals. Another thing you can do is visiting institutions like our aquarium or other zoos and aquariums who are putting these conservation efforts into play because every time you come visit, all the money that you're putting in, that you're donating, goes towards these conservation efforts. So you visiting us and continuing to learn, that helps us protect these animals. We'll go back into Shark Lagoon, so I'm not standing on a black screen, or we'll take a look at these two sharks here. So, like I said, when you come visit us, that helps. That is a conservation effort as well. Also, learning about the challenges these animals are facing. We've got two sharks here on this screen. These are both sharks that we have here at the aquarium, our zebra shark here and our gray reef shark here. And these animals, they are facing challenges in their natural habitat. Things like pollution and changing water temperatures, access to food, a reliable source of food. All of these things are challenges to these animals, to their safety, to their health, and to their strong population numbers. So learning about these problems, that is another way that you can help protect these animals. Now, these are two really neat sharks that we have here in Shark Lagoon we can take a look at. We've got them swimming around. Let's see if we can spot our zebra shark and our gray reef shark. Here's our, oh, that's our sandbar shark. We've got our black tip. There is a gray reef shark in the back, all the way back there. Kind of hides once it's in the back. And our zebra shark's coming towards us right here. Now, zebra sharks are another interesting animal that we have here, another conservation project or conservation story, I should say, that we're involved with. They are native to Australia. They live in tropical waters. They're not native to us here, but we are involved in some projects where we are working on artificial insemination with these animals to build up their population. So our sharks here, they are part of that program. And all the animals we have here, they're the things that we learn from them, that all goes towards our conservation efforts. So just by making observations, watching them, learning more about these animals, that helps us to protect them. Now, sharks are fascinating animals. I hope that that is something that you have learned in watching them. If you have any questions about how incredible these animals are, you of course can text us. We'll watch Shark Lagoon for another couple minutes and I'll share a little bit more about our sharks here before we end our program. But there is so much that we can learn about these animals. Now, you might wonder, we're just watching these animals. How is that helping? But like I said, the more we can learn about them, the more that we can understand these animals and understand what they need. So we have very specific sharks here at the aquarium because we know from observation, from working with other institutions, that these sharks do well in this type of habitat, in the size of the habitat, in what we're feeding them, in the space that they have. And that is really important to us here at the aquarium. We want to make sure that our sharks are healthy. And so we look for certain behaviors to make sure they're doing well. And we would never want to have animals who don't look like they are doing well in our exhibit. So we take a lot of care and pride in creating spaces for our animals to keep them nice and safe and healthy. Excellent. All right, it looks like we've got some questions coming in. Wonderful, because we've got just a couple minutes left. Excellent. So the question is, why are we breeding zebra sharks? Great question. Oh, there's our zebra shark right on cue. So these animals, zebra sharks, kind of like what I was saying, we know that they do well here at Aquarium. And we know that people, when they can see these animals in person, build connections, build these stronger connections, and that helps with those conservation efforts because people then want to protect these animals. So we want to have these animals in our exhibits, but we don't want to affect their populations out in their natural habitat. And so what we're doing is we're working on breeding these animals so that we can have a population within aquariums and zoos under human care without pulling them from the wild. So they're kind of separate populations so we can learn about them. It also helps with conservation efforts. Learning about them in an institution like our aquarium helps protect them out in the wild, but we're not pulling them from the wild. So that is one of the reasons that we are part of this breeding program is so that we can have our populations within an institution to continue to learn about them, which then helps our efforts helping them in the wild, but we aren't pulling them from their natural habitat. So that's a little bit about why we would breed our zebra sharks. Now, interesting enough, zebra sharks, they do lay eggs. Now, that might not sound very interesting. You might think, don't all sharks lay eggs? But they actually don't. Sharks can give birth in a couple different ways. And this is why studying them is so important. Some sharks will lay eggs, like our zebra shark. Some sharks give live birth, similar to how mammals, humans, give live birth. And then some sharks, they lay eggs, but the female is going to hold the eggs inside, and then the baby hatches sort of inside, and then it's born alive, which sounds a little bit confusing. But each shark species gives birth in a different way. Now, it's really hard to study that out in the open ocean. And so having some animals here at the aquarium for us to study can help us understand their breeding habits and patterns, which can help us understand the animals living in the wild. So that's why it's all connected. So aquariums and zoos are really playing a really important role in studying these animals, and that helps us with our conservation efforts to protect these animals out in their natural habitat. All right, everyone, as those sharks swim on by, thank you so much for joining us to learn a little bit more about sharks and the conservation efforts that are going on here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. Like I said, we've got a lot more programming for you today. At 10 and 11, we have more programs to celebrate Shark and Ray Awareness Day. We hope to see you then. Bye, everyone.